Okay, welcome. We are in our second day of oral finals, second semester for the Renaissance to Revolutions, and so excited to have Ryan, Hiram, and Elijah. And we've just done the camera checks and everything. So I think what we'll do is we'll have a prayer. Do one of the three of you want to offer that for us? Is there anybody that would like to offer?
I'd be happy to say the prayer.
Okay, thanks.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're very grateful for this day and that we get to see how much we've learned. And we pray that everything that we have learned will come quickly when we need it and that we will all do well. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Hiram. Why we've got a few minutes. Why do we do oral finals? What do you think is the purpose? There's lots of purposes, but what do you think?
It has something to do with you liking to torture us. I feel like that's part of it.
That's
At least part of it.
exactly right. I woke up like 14 years ago and I decided, what could I do on May 3rd, 2022? I'm going to torture three young men.
I knew it. I knew it.
What else? Because I'm not gonna deny that one, but what else? Why else? You guys, don't you know? Why would you think you'd stand up in front of two teachers and answer questions standing up wearing Sunday clothes?
At least for me, oral finals have been a great way to solidify my knowledge and my ideas. We kind of go over everything in the semester really quickly. We take a week to examine it, and then we have finals, and it's just like, oh yeah, we I remember learning that. And then with oral finals, you kind of wrap it all together and be like, oh, okay, this is how this ties to this, and I get a chance to solidify, you know, my previous ideas and combine them or synthesize them with new ideas.
Love it. Good. Are there any other thoughts of why we might have oral finals? Hiram and Ryan are just going, I don't know. I really like the torture one. That's the real one. Okay, so I think Elijah is right on. It's not torturing, but it is getting to use your mind. You've put a lot of things into your mind and your heart. You've actually put a lot of things from your mind down into your heart. And now you get to pull that out and articulate it. And you get to practice in a safe place where you might not know exactly how to answer it, but you can actually say that. And there's criteria in the rubrics that allows for a little silence and a little thinking and a little deferment, right? And it's because in life we are supposed to be able to say we don't know. We're supposed, this is not, you're not learning in a vacuum. You're actually practicing talking to people in the real world. When somebody asks you, did you hear about the leak from the Supreme Court that they're going to overturn Roe versus Wade? That's kind of what happened during the night. That you can stand up and you can ask questions and you can tell what you believe, but hopefully it's a safe place wherever you're going to be talking about. Did anybody hear about that leak? Okay, you'll have to look it up after class. It's interesting. And then you'll have to ask the question, do you think Biden will stack the Supreme Court? I don't know. But anyway, Okay, let's start just a little bit early. Let me get my where are the oral? There they are. Okay, I've got to get the rubrics up, and I've got to make sure I get Ryan's name in. Okay. Jolene, are you ready? Do you have anything that you want to add?
Not necessarily. You say it so eloquently, but I know that for me, doing oral finals is my way of discussing it in my own head. So I think discussion just, there's something to it.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready, Ryan? Are you standing up, Ryan?
I'm sitting.
You're sitting. Is your computer able to allow you to stand up?
I can tilt up, but standing I'll have to kind of I
Move your
don't know.
chair.
I don't think standing will work here.
Okay, is everything all cleared off on
Yeah.
your countertop? Okay, sounds good. Okay. Oh, let's start this. I'll go ahead and start, Jolene, and then you can have some other questions in a few minutes. Okay. Ryan, what do you know about the Articles of Confederation? Yeah. It sounded like I was going to say more, and I think I was, but what do you know
Yeah.
about the Articles of Confederation?
So they were the first thing the colonists used to have a government. It was what they had before they decided to make the Constitution. But it wasn't quite as good because it just was thrown together because they needed something right then or else it would all fall apart.
Yeah. And tell us what were the pros and cons of the Articles of Confederation?
I don't remember specifically the pros and cons, but I do remember it was not quite logically as sound as the Constitution. And it just had some key holes that the Constitution doesn't have.
And do you remember any of those?
No,
Okay.
I don't remember that.
That's okay. Did it have a judicial system?
I'm gonna say it probably didn't.
Good guess. It did not. Did it have an executive?
Yeah. Yes.
And who was that executive?
That would have been the president.
Yeah. Was there a president of the United States then?
No, they didn't have. They had. What was it? I guess the leader in the Continental Congress.
Okay, so they had some legislative. They had a legislative branch, right? And they didn't have an executive, which was interesting. And so it caused problems for keeping the states all together. Do you remember about that a little bit? And that in the Revolutionary War there was such a problem with getting states to supply soldiers and supply other things that they needed. Do you remember anything about that? We didn't talk a lot about that.
I remember some stuff about it being harder to organize and transport things in between states because they didn't really have the government didn't have as much power to settle stuff in between them.
Yeah. Okay. So then obviously they knew they needed to have something else, and they came up with a constitution. And how does the Constitution fix some of those problems?
Well, it just it has a judicial branch, so it has something to enforce itself, and also executive branch,
Yeah.
because otherwise there's nothing to even enforce itself, and it's not even a document that has much legal weight besides the legislative branch, which can't exactly do as much. So it would fix the problem of it having power at all, which would make it a more logically sound document, and it would be able to govern the people better.
Yeah. And what do you think are the pros and cons of Constitution? This is something we didn't really talk about a ton, but how do you think and feel about the Constitution?
Well, I think nowadays people say it has a lot of things, and that it doesn't really. It's just people misinterpret what it actually means, and people may say it depends on who's interpreting it for the different meaning, but the reality is it's going to be the same meaning each way if you look at it how it was looked at back in the days when it was written. So the cons of it are just that people have the ability to twist it because it's a little old, but they can't really twist it. It's just a harder document to understand.
Yeah. And so a lot of people don't like the old stuff. It's a little old. What do you think about their opinion that the document's a little old?
I think it could be a simpler document, but the thing is, it's not like we can go and rewrite it, because if you rewrite it, it's going to end up coming out different, even if you have, because there's going to be bias in translating that. So it's not going to come out the same. So it would have to stay in the old edition of how it is.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Jolene, do you have a question for him?
Yeah. I'd actually like to take us back before the Articles of Confederation, before the Constitution. Can you give me a summary of what the two treaties on government by John Locke was about?
That was about that one was about where what the natural rights of man are, and kind of laid out the outline and logical reasoning behind why people would have inalienable rights to a certain degree. I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, but was that the one with the example of gathering nuts? Or is that a different reading?
I don't remember. Julie, do you remember that? Is that correct?
Yes, it is the one, gathering nuts, where he's established. Well, I'll let you talk.
Okay, yeah. So it just like that, it showed logical reasoning how we have a right to property in all cases, because you can't make a difference in between when you own something before and after as well, if you're in the middle of the process of obtaining it.
So both Rousseau in France and our founding fathers on the American continent both liked Locke and some of his ideas. But why was it that they were so different in how they interpreted what Locke said?
Um, I think they were more different with that because they wanted more a republic. I'm pretty sure Locke was leaning more towards democracy so that it could be ruled by the people. But the founding fathers didn't want to go quite that far with the government and give the people that much power because they would end up doing what France did and just go crazy.
Do you think there are any other reasons why France, as you say, went crazy?
I think the main reason was just they weren't exactly ready for that much power to be given to them. That's partly why the colonists didn't do a democracy. They were ready to have more power than the French, but the thing is they just they couldn't quite handle a democracy because they have to have a very moral people to even have a democracy at all. And that's going to be a pretty hard thing to find among all the people on Earth, is a moral society. So it's kind of hard to have a democracy, so they fell apart.
Well said. Thank you. Julie?
So I want to continue. What's the difference between a republic and a democracy? And I know we didn't talk about it, but what do you think are the differences?
The difference is that with a republic, it's ruled by law. People are ruled by law, but with a democracy, they'll be ruled by the majority. So with a republic, you're going to have some kind of constitution that can't really be changed that at all, or maybe changed, but just not really easily at all, so that the government can be governed by law. Instead of a democracy, they just govern themselves by the will of the majority.
Excellent. So you have to have you were saying you have to have a moral people for a democracy. Is that true for any other form of government, or is that?
Well, it's true. It's always going to be better when you have a moral people. So a democracy can happen and have an unmoral people, but just won't go as well because it leans more into that unmoral side and just gives that unmoral side more leverage over the rest.
Awesome. Okay, Ryan, what was your most influential book this semester and why?
I really liked reading through the Give Me Liberty and Give Me Death speech. That one's just kind of fun to read in the first place, but then also just showing how it was just cool seeing how effective it is when someone uses persuasive speaking and so well that's able to get people to go fight, I feel like if someone was just talking to me, it wouldn't really change my mind too much about like a large decision like that. But Patrick Henry was able to persuade a lot of people to join the fight.
Yeah. Awesome. And if you could name some of the most influential literature for America, what would it be? There's some we read this semester, but what would have been the most influential literature for our colonial days?
Well, you had the Constitution that was written by them, but that would have been all the books they'd read before it kind of compiled into that. Would and all those books would be like Common Sense and uh the writings by John Locke.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any like stories or histories that might also engage in that influence for the colonies? I can't even talk today.
Well, I'm pretty sure Pilgrim's Progress would have helped them. Would have been something they read because they seem to want to have know that you need to have a moral society for certain kinds of government. So they learned through Pilgrim's Progress that they weren't quite ready for some forms, so they had to do a republic.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So then, with this literature and this history and this philosophy that's influencing the colonists, how important is it for us today to continue to read books that will keep us free? And why?
Well, I think it's very important because if you're reading books that keep you free, you'll be free, which is something that most people are going to want. So I think that when you read a book, it and you you'll be able to have more knowledge, and what keeps you free is really knowing what true principles are, so you're not trapped in a circle of thinking you're free when you're really not.
Awesome. Good job. Okay, let's just give us a few minutes to write down some things. Okay, Are we ready for Hiram? Do you need some more time, Jolene?
I'm good.
Okay. Let me just get your name in here. I have to sneeze. Ooh, but I'm not gonna do it. Does anybody else have allergies? They're so bad right now.
Only to oral exams.
Yes, and what does it cause? Like a rash or?
I get really thirsty.
Yes, yes. You gotta get your water. Okay. Let me get. Jolene, do you want to start him off this time?
Sure.
Okay. Ready? Go for it.
Okay, so it seems like every semester Julie has us reading books that we kind of go, ugh, why did I have to read that? Can you tell us maybe the why behind when she chooses books like that?
Well, I know it's important not just to read books that you agree with. It's important to put yourself out there and to sort through books that are kind of half and half. They're not really black or white. And because that's how the world is, it's not all truth. So by doing that, by going through those books that aren't only truth, we teach ourselves how to find truth, how to identify error, and how to learn from the both of them.
So, can you pick one of the books that we read this semester that were kind of, and tell me like your takeaway? Like, what was one of those truths that you found in it?
Yeah, the first book that comes to mind is A Modest Proposal. Yeah, that one was very interesting. But what I got out of it was probably just knowledge on the use of satire, like how effective it is and what its purpose is. And I really have come to the conclusion that it's not the best way to convince people to change. Like if I was one of those landowners being accused of eating babies, yeah, I think I'd turn against that.
Was it effective for Jonathan Swift?
I know he probably got a lot of attention with that book from both the landowners and, the peasants of the area. So I think it did provoke some change, but it wasn't the right kind of change. It wasn't the peaceful kind of change that you usually want to happen.
So tell me about the other book that was kind of, I didn't love reading it, was The Sorrows of Young Werther. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that book?
So Sorrows of Young Werther, Goethe wrote it to earn money. He was frequenting debtor's prison quite often, so this was just another way to try and keep himself out of there. It talked about this young man who kind of lets himself become consumed by an idol, or this someone he admires, this young woman, and he lets go of himself. He really becomes so unconscious of his desires that he fails to recognize that she's becoming an idol, and so much so that it leads him to suicide. And that spurred it spiked the suicide rates in the area, and it was a very influential book. But my biggest takeaway from that was that there are other healthy solutions to life. It's not as bad as you seem. It's not as bad as it seems, and it's important to be aware of what's going on inside us and make sure that the way that it's taking us is the most healthy way, and the Spirit is really helpful in discerning that.
How do you feel that this book influenced the French Revolution?
Honestly, I have no idea. I have never thought about that before. Like, I guess they were in the same era, kind of. That
Yeah,
time before the French Revolution, there was this phase that all those English countries were going through, and it was kind of the romantic phase where people really gave way to their emotions and their desires, and less so to reasoning and logic. And yeah, we kind of see that in the whole French Revolution, how people got carried away with the want for equality and not so much reason.
I really appreciate the way that you took a second after you were like, I'm not sure I've even thought about that in that way. And yet you took a second to pause. And then you came up with this fantastic answer after you'd allowed your mind to kind of think through things a little bit. And that was really impressive, thinking on your feet like that. Well done.
Oh,
Julie, I'll
shucks,
let you
thanks.
ask a few questions.
Yeah, that was awesome. Orals are for learning other things. Okay, take us on a journey to describe from the very, and I know you don't have to talk much about last semester, but if you're watching this panorama of this of samplings of this history, where do you think we went wrong? Well, where do you think the French went wrong when we were coming, coming from this republic of the Medicis and Florence, and we have these great ideas, and then we come into this more modern world in the 1700s, and you see this change. The people from America go a different route, and the people in France go a different route. Where would you say that? No, I wouldn't say where, because I don't know if we know where from the little sampling that we read. But why do you think the two went different directions?
Well, in the 1700s, the French had just come from a long period of having kings, and they didn't get to participate much in the government at all. And so they lacked experience. They were starved from this experience that they had had previously when it was a republic and a democracy. And when they realized that, we want to get back into this republic thing, they didn't have the tools and the knowledge that they needed to build that successfully. So they relied very heavily on like the imagination, what they thought would be effective, but they had no practical experience.
Good. What have you learned about this lesson, this panorama?
I think that it's important to be up to date and active in the current events, not just leaving it to the most educated and the people who think they know what's best for you. You need to know that for yourself, and you need to make sure you're being represented, because you're part of the community. You should be represented in that majority that decides what is best for the general welfare. So yeah, being informed, taking part in what's going on politically, that's important.
What have you done differently since you've discovered this takeaway of knowing for yourself?
I've definitely wanted to come to my own opinions, not just take others' word for it. Dig around in just explore a lot of different sources and not just take one to be the oracle of truth. Look at them all and take your opinion from that, from the culmination of all of those.
That's awesome. What have your discussions been like with your family from what you're reading? Can you remember any experience you've had sharing some of the things that you're learning?
I remember during the Constitution reading, I had some discussions with my mom about general welfare because I also, like, at that same time, I got to participate in this Constitution Bee. And yeah, it was really cool. As we went down to Utah and it was at American Heritage. I don't know if you know where they are, but yeah, we studied five clauses everyone should know: the Supremacy Clause, Necessary, Proper Clause, Interstate Commerce, and a few others. And the other one was general welfare. And I was really trying to match the actions of the representatives nowadays to that clause, and they weren't quite matching, like not at all, because the general welfare clause specifically gives Congress power to carry out this very precise list of powers in Article 1 and Section 8. And they've deviated from those big time. And it's because they've, kind of construed their interpretation of the Constitution. But it also has to do with the general will, because as we become more, liberal and the opinions of what is right change, they're not going to want to adhere to that list of powers as much as they do. But because we have enabled the general will to go to be the leading force in our government, that's why the Constitution is kind of changing and our representatives aren't, as close to it as they should be.
That's awesome. Keep up those conversations with family. Why would I ask that? Why would I ask that you keep up the conversations with family and with others about these kinds of things?
Well, I think it's a good way to bond with your family, not just saying good morning, good night, passing them as they do their homework, but to have, good, healthy conversations about what you're learning about and to, explore the other person's mind. I think that's really bonding, and it's strengthening as a family. Like if we know that our other family members are strong and they're being educated, and it just unites us and gives us so much more power against the adversary.
I like that. Jolene, do you have another question for this young man?
Yeah. So I've been kind of pondering principles and how we apply the principles that we're learning from our reading into our life. Can you give us a principle that you have learned from some of the readings that we've done this semester?
I can't say that I've applied them all, but I've definitely given them all some thought. That's what's so great about those study guides. Probably ever since we did the Socratic circles, and I mentioned this in my written exam, I've been a lot more aware of my own behaviors, the behaviors of others, and the devices and ways people use to be more effective, more persuasive, and concise. So just it's kind of opened this door for me to be able to see into other people and to see what makes them good at what they do, and what causes them to fail in some things. And it's just that awareness that has really helped me out. I've been able to find a lot more principles just from that one.
Can you take what you've said and put it in the form of a principle? You know how we ask you to do the 5 types of questions and one of them is a principle question?
Okay, so a principle. Okay, maybe as we are aware of the action reaction pairs that others use, we'll be more able to become those ourselves and use those in our lives.
Well done. That was a really good principle. Good job. Which out of all the reading was your favorite, and why?
I really like John Locke's Second Treatise of Government. Is that how you say it? Treatise or treatise?
Mhm.
Treatise?
Yes.
Okay. Just because I think I'd always wondered why we had governments and why governments have so much control, but I'd never really studied, the social contract before. So just knowing those natural rights that we possessed before we had governments, and then those rights that we gave up to the governments in return for protection and security of property, that was really a great foundation for my understanding of government.
So does it make you want to be more influential yourself in your community as far as governments go?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've actually thought about going into politics just because I want to make a change. I want to make a difference. But yeah, that knowledge has made me want to become more informed and aware of what's going on so I can be a force for good.
Nice. Thank you.
Have you heard of Hillsdale College? By the way, we should clap for it. Have you heard of Hillsdale College before?
I have heard of it. I don't know that much about it, only that, I have a friend that applied recently.
I would look it up and study about it to see if that's where you want to go. They turn out some awesome politicians there because they're studying all the great books and they leave God in the picture.
Yes,
You
that's
can even
important.
talk about God. They don't take any government money, so they don't have to be
Yeah, under the thumb of the
forced.
government. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have to be forced to teach certain ways. Whereas, I love the church schools, but there's a lot of they have to follow some of the government mandates, and so sometimes you can get kind of confused in the other schools because there's such talk about the Rousseauian principles or other principles like that are really being pushed right now in this socialist world. But anyway, look that up.
Hillsdale. Okay.
Yes, and there are scholarships.
Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for those.
Yeah. Okay, let's write a few things. Although I was able to write quite a bit, I still have a few things, it looks like. Okay, do you guys know the word snazzy? Do you know what that means? Okay, that's an old word. I was just saying, Hiram, you looked snazzy in your the first criteria, and I thought, gosh, I wonder if they even know what that means because I don't hear it very often. But okay, we got some chats going. Oh, it's Hiram. That's awesome. Okay, let's bring on Hiram. Sorry, Elijah. Elijah, I want to give you an hour-long oral final.
I appreciate that.
Because this
Mostly
is
just because you complained that it was torture.
I don't know. You know what? I probably deserve it. You're probably right about that.
Okay, Ryan and Hiram, if you have to leave after the 15 minutes, you're welcome to leave. Just kidding. Okay, ready? Go. But Elijah, I will do this. If you look not past, but in the past 4 years that you've been taking the class, you took this class 4 years, right?
Yep. Throughout
Yeah.
all high school.
Yeah, you started with the postmodern year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
Yeah. Okay. So looking over this panorama, I kind of asked this of Hiram for just this year, but look at the panorama of all 4 years, from the Greeks through the Romans, through the medieval, through all of all the things that you've learned. Can you give us a little picture of the movement of history in the way in the way it comes out?
Let me see. Let me try to condense the entire history of mankind into a few minutes. Maybe a little bit more specific. What are you looking for out of that question? No,
I'm not looking for anything.
I don't know I don't know how to say it. Okay.
Yes, you do.
I do, but I don't know which one to pick.
Just pick the one that
Okay.
comes out. I'm not.
Yeah, I
I'm
think I'm
not.
going to talk a little bit about. Huh. Yeah. Okay. 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 I think I got something to say.
Okay.
I think. This is a difficult question.
No,
Okay,
it's
I'm going
just
to talk about
you're
human nature.
nervous.
I am. Well, it's a big question.
I know.
It's a great question, though. It's a
I
great
know,
question.
but you merit it.
I think people think that human nature is unchanging, and I agree with that in a lot of ways. But I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. The way that I think about human nature is I look at it through the lens of like a bell curve. A bell curve, right? There's X, Y, and the bell curve is a plot of different data points, and it peaks at the average. And I think in a lot of ways, almost every choice we make kind of follows in line with our human nature. It follows in line with self-preservation and that kind of trait. But there are a few data points or a few outliers, and those are on the extremes. And I guess they could be, we could look at them or conceptualize them as like a rebellion against human nature. And there are positive and negative ones. They're on the extremes. But even though there are a few of them, they are what shape human history. I think it's that rebellion against the status quo, against human nature, that really changes something, right? It keeps us varied. Because if it wasn't for those outliers, then it would be a consistent line. I think it was Mark Twain who said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And it rhymes because we have those same patterns, but there are different tones to them, kind of like in music, how it's the same general pattern, but it has variation, and that's what keeps it interesting. And in the same way, I think that there are some people and some choices in life and in the space of time that have kind of set the world on a different path. And it's those choices. I think this goes back, I think it's called the Pareto principle or something like that. It's this general law that says 20% of your choices make up 80% of your outcomes. And in that way, those little choices, those little movements are what shape history. And I think that's what this course, all four of my years in this course are studying. We're studying those extreme little outliers and how they change, the average, how they change people's choices, people's outcomes, and people's ability to make those choices and outcomes. And yeah,
Wow.
I think that's what history is a study of.
I love that. So can you tell me where these fit into your idea here? A Pilgrim's Progress. I couldn't think of his name. Robinson Crusoe, and what's the other one that I'm thinking of?
Yeah, Goethe.
Yes.
Okay. You
You can treat them
So no,
separately.
Yeah, okay. I know that Pilgrim's Progress is the earliest one. And something interesting about it was how it was like the second most published and popular book, second to the Bible, which is really interesting because it's very similar to the Bible. So I think that gives you a good insight into the zeitgeist of the people. Um, I think that's one of the reasons we read literature. Like when you meet someone, you don't really ask them like, "What's your age? What's your lineage?" You usually ask them like, "What interests you?" And by examining history through literature, we have the opportunity to ask, ancient peoples, what interests you? And Pilgrim's Progress is the story of like one man going through this allegorical journey, this pilgrimage, if you will, to meet God, and to be worthy of that. And he's got all these obstacles, which are kind of parallel to the authors, but eventually he meets God, and that's the pinnacle of the story. That's the whole purpose of the story. And I think people in that day and age really related to that because they had similar journeys. And now that kind of transitions into a new genre, which is a Defoe's Crusoe. There's so many O's in this semester. I was thinking of Rousseau, but there's so many O's in this semester. But yeah, so Robinson Crusoe is all about another personal journey. It's individual.
And Daniel Defoe.
Exactly. Defoe's Crusoe goes over another individual journey, but this one is less allegorical. It's less spiritual, but it still was deeply influential. But this one was more in the physical realm. It was a survival guide, kind of, as he's stranded on this island and he has to use his own wits basically to survive. But even in that story, there's like he acknowledges God in almost every action. He's like, even though I'm being self-reliant, I'm still dependent upon God for my survival. So he still acknowledges that. And then we get into Goethe with the Sorrows of Young Werther, or Werther. I don't know how to pronounce anything in French, so I'm going to stop trying. But this is a different story. It's very individual still. All these stories are very individual to one person. But in this one, it's less about a journey and more about a decay. Right? He starts off in this happy place. He's already, for all intents and purposes, reached his goal. He's happy. He's like, I'm in the countryside. This is better than town life. I'm happy. And then, as Hiram was saying, he meets this idol and he exacerbates it. He makes it, he's almost parasitic. And eventually he lets that idol be his downfall. So instead of a progressive narrative, it's a regressive narrative. And it's almost, I'm trying to think if he does acknowledge God in that one. I'm not quite sure. But it is almost devoid of anything else. It's kind of like, yeah. And in making his idol of a Lot, whatever her name was. Lottie, yeah. And he replaces the idol of God. He's replaced the idol.
Ooh.
And you see how that replacement leads to his downfall.
It's interesting when you see it that way, that he replaces God with Lottie. You see that Lottie doesn't accept him, doesn't want him, and that's like God not wanting him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever thought of that.
It's kind of like Paradise Lost and Satan. It's the same kind of story, right? It's this rejection from your idol, and that leads to rebellion and destruction. At least in where there's situation suicide, but yeah.
Okay, just have to write about that. Thank you. Take it away, Jolene.
Okay, so I love that you have taken all 4 years of Julie's class and seen the kind of progression that has come along. So now that you're going to be headed off to new adventures, how do you feel that this class has prepared you to move on to your next phase of life?
I think the two main things that I've learned throughout this course. Jeez, it's hard. It's hard to answer. But I think one thing I've gotten a lot better at is being articulate, and that's really important, because without being articulate, you can't be convincing. And you can't even think really. I don't know if most people have this, but a lot of my thoughts go through my inner monologue, and like they go through an inner voice, and I kind of think in words sometimes. But if you're not articulate in your writing or your speech, that's the same on the inside as well. The same psychological. You haven't really thought about that. And that's one thing that I've learned a lot more about myself throughout this course is like, I think explicitly and implicitly. Like I think inside, I think of something, but I also think while I'm speaking. Like even right now, I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying, but it's just kind of coming out, it's flowing, and I'm trying to communicate those thoughts. So I think learning how to be a better communicator is really important. It's something that I've gotten a lot better at throughout this course. As we're constantly writing and we're constantly discussing and debating, you have to be articulate to think, and then also to convince others. And then secondly, I think I've learned, Hiram touched a little bit on this, but how to find truths in everything, honestly. How to find truths in something that isn't complete. Because I really don't think that there's anything in this world processed through my interpretation that is wholly complete, that is wholly true. And so the challenge with that is being able to find truth with incomplete work or with incomplete interpretation, and refining that interpretation, refining your critical thinking skills, where you can find principles and you can find patterns in whatever you read, whether it be satire, whether it be genealogy, whether it be a novel, whether it be a political essay.
I like that answer. So I'm about to really rack your brain again. So you have had to read a lot of books the last 4 years on all different subjects, all different styles. Which book out of all 4 years was your absolute favorite? And what was it that you learned from it that made it your favorite?
Mean question.
I told you we were going to torture you.
No, he called it upon himself. So we're just being your obedient servants.
All right, I'm going to answer this question, and then after I'm done with this oral final, I'm going to pose the same question to you, because I want you to go through the same stress and the same strife that I'm going through right now, because it is so difficult.
After the bell rings.
Elijah, my oral final is next Wednesday. I promise I get the same pain as you.
Julie, there's a little suggestion. You should ask her that. Oh my gosh. I don't know if this is my favorite, but this is the first one that came to mind, which is a good indicator that it might be my favorite. But immediately I was thinking of Paradise Lost. That was a really hard book to read because it was so dense. It was so long and it was so dense. Like every passage, I'd be like, oh, I've got an idea about this. And then I would search something and then end up spending about 30 minutes looking into something else. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be reading this. It's really hard to put into words how much that book has to offer and how much it changed me. But I think the most impactful part of that book, if I had to take like a little principle from it, was there's this passage where Satan's talking about spiritual reign in hell and serve in heaven or something like that. I might be paraphrasing, but I think that's a really good summary for the history of tyranny I think a despot or would say, I'd rather have control over this people than have them be free, have me be free. And that's one of the great paradoxes of Satan is he's just as trapped, if not more trapped. And that's true on the macro level with history and with politics, but it's also true on the individual level. I think we tyrannize over ourselves when we rebel against truth, and that and then we trick ourselves and we say, oh, well, at least I'm in control. At least I have control over myself, and I don't have to serve something else. And at least for me, I think of myself as a more independent person. I think I have that propensity. So I've been in that situation where I'm like, well, at least I can control myself. If nothing else, I have power over myself. But I think this goes back to one of the bigger lessons I've learned from this semester, but also from all of humanities, is that it's okay not to rule yourself. It's okay to give up some of your power to a greater cause. The problem is, first finding that cause, and then it's actually doing it, which is a lot easier said than done. But yeah, that's I think that's my favorite, or the book that has made one of the biggest impacts on me.
That answer gave me goosebumps, so I think it was well said.
Are you going to ask? Oh, I guess we should do this. That was awesome. Are you going to ask Jolene?
Yeah, Jolene. So, what was your favorite book? I don't know. When did you? I don't know. Did you read through some of our postmodern books?
No,
Or was that before?
that was before I started helping.
She's well, you started reading the Greeks with Jacoby.
Yes.
Been through 3 years.
Yeah, and honestly, that first year I can't even remember half the books we read, other than I remember not loving reading Herodotus. But I'm not sure I could tell you what I got out of it to say that I loved or hated. But what was the book last year? Trying to think. The one coming to my mind was Inferno, but I think it was after Inferno. We read a book that I just kind of had this light bulb come on.
What was it about?
I'm trying to remember. This is where we need to have a list of all the books, right, Elijah? Wouldn't that be so helpful?
That would be very convenient.
Oh, dang.
To have this list of books. I remember really disliking The Prince, but I also loved what I learned from it. And maybe you guys will get this when you guys become parents. But man, there were some times that I saw myself in my earlier years being that tyrannical parent. I was a yeller, and I was, my two oldest kids got the worst part of me. And it seems like since I've been on this journey of learning truth through these great books, I've become a calmer parent. And I think part of it's because you read books like that. Like, I felt the same way when I read Social Contract and thought about the general will and how we are forced to be free. And I thought, gosh, are there times when I'm forcing my children to choose a certain way and that's their freedom? And these books really, the contrast of them has really shown me how I don't want to be, and finding true principles because I see what ones they're breaking. So, but I also felt like you, I really loved Paradise Lost, even though as I read it myself, I felt like all I was getting was that like 5%. Like, am I really understanding everything that I'm reading? But it was in the discussions that it was like all these lights came on about my relationship to Jesus Christ and how I wanted to understand where Satan was coming from so that I could make sure that I blocked everything that he was trying to do. And So yeah, I guess that's a few of the ones that I really appreciated.
Awesome. Good job,
Lily,
Lily. Oh, go ahead.
same question.
Oh,
Because
me?
you've had the chance to teach us about these things, and you've already read them before, but you got
Oh,
to
yeah.
revisit them.
Yeah,
And
this
she
is
does
not
claim
hard.
that she learns from all the students, so she should be learning something.
Yeah, and it's not hard. I just did my graduation speech, and my two greatest lessons have been to know thyself, which Plato, Aristotle, all of them said that. And so I would have to say Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics is my all-time absolute favorite book that talks about the golden mean and that talks about the two extremes of virtues. And I'm always trying to align myself to that center. It's not, it's like a work in progress.
Yeah.
And then the other person or the other, so you know thyself and then know God aright, and that's from Paradise Lost, is also my one of my favorites. But I love Jane Eyre. I love Inferno. I absolutely love Dante's
Good one.
Inferno. But I also love Herodotus because I love that that Battle of Marathon. But anyway, those two are my favorite, and so it's interesting that you chose that as one of your favorites, Elijah. That's
I
awesome.
think we're boring Hiram. I think he's getting a snack.
Well, that's
know.
okay, and it's time. We didn't make people wait this long, but
Sorry.
you all have been such great students, and I'm going to invite Ryan to speak more because Ryan, you have so much to teach us, and we're going to miss you so much, Elijah. I don't even know how I'm going to go on without you, but I will because I am not ruled by emotion like Werther was. So we will go on, but we really want to hear about your life. I want you to check in periodically and say, hey.
You're off to Hawaii, right? How soon?
I'm going to go on the 20th of August. That's when I'm leaving. Yeah. Pretty
That's
excited.
exciting.
That's really exciting. So with this, we will part, but just know that I know that there's a few grades that need to come in. Oh, the three of you, will you please submit this oral exam? I forgot to say that in the very beginning. So submit that, and then I'll go ahead and put in your grade. And if there's anything else that you need from me, I used to have this program that would print off these what are they called? Grade reports, but I can't figure out what happened to it, and I can't see it online anymore. So I don't know how I'm going to do that, but it's always hit and miss with me because technology is always so expensive and I don't buy the expensive stuff. So, but if you want a grade report, if you want a transcript, I can try and put one together. Otherwise, it's up to you to do that. So any questions for me before we go?
What's the next era that we're going to be studying next year?
Oh, it's the postmodern era, and we're gonna, one of my favorite readings lately that Elijah did not read, but Elijah, I will send this document to you if you want, but it's Derrida, Derrida. He's a philosopher, modern philosopher, complete atheist, hates any structure, but he writes this article called Structure, Sign, and Play, I think. And he just talks about, and we talked about this in class, I think, with this center. When you have a center that you center your life on, it creates this boundary, this structure. And that anything, you could do anything within this structure because you have that center. And he's suggesting, let's just take out the center, like Christ or God or whatever. And it completely destroys the structure. And so you don't have to stay within any structure anymore. You can go here and here and let's take out truth. And now you can do anything you want. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about, and that's what postmodernism is all about, is take out those truths, take out those centers, and you can do anything you want. You can think anything you want. So this I love Elon Musk. I don't know if any of you, I like to follow him, and he wants to have these home robots, and they sound great. I would love to have one. Yeah, robot, will you go get me some breakfast? And then just keep teaching while he's going to get my breakfast. Can you vacuum the floor? But there's got to be a structure, and Elon Musk talks about this. There's got to be a structure with an unthinking robot. It can't think, and it can't have empathy, really. It can only be programmed to do what it's to do. And what if it strangles me? It doesn't have any morals. So the thing is there's got to even be structure in programmed things as well. But Derrida's saying, take out the center. So that's what we're going to be studying next year, is all of these modern books that kind of either bring us to truth or destroy truth. Because that's where we live right now, is in this world where we have truth in the Bible and the Book of Mormon and all those canons, and then we have absolutely no truth, or it's your truth and my truth. So, well, Elijah, you can just come right on in. We could have guests. We could have a guest today where you can show up and discuss Derrida with us.
While I'm surfing.
Yes.
That'll be my that'll be my little.
Yeah. So does that help you, Hiram, answer your question? So I think it'll be a really good year because it will really prepare us for what's going on right now and how it got to that point. So I really admire all of you and really adore you as well. Can I do that? Can I adore you without you feeling like, ah? But I really do, and I really learn from all of you. So thank you so much. Jolene, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I feel like this has been such a fantastic year, and there have been so many great things to learn from it. And watching each of you as you progress, it's so fun to read your assignments and your thought processes as you're going. They're just, you guys, your growth is amazing. And the process that you guys are going through to find who you are is pretty fantastic. So it's kind of fun to be, in a way, the fly on the wall that gets to watch you guys grow up and becoming, and it's pretty fun. So I am just so grateful for this opportunity to get to enjoy watching this along with you guys.
Thank you, Jolene. Thank you all. All get a clap. Really a big pat on the back, and keep going. And this summer, play a lot, because in the fall, you're going to just be studying a lot. So have fun. Take care of yourselves. We're going to miss you, Elijah.
It was kind of funny. The other day I went, my younger brother goes to private school. So like he wanted to like walk through the halls one more time just so he could like say goodbye to the place. And I was like, oh, it sucks that I go to a Zoom meeting because you can't walk through a Zoom meeting and like remember the good old days in like that one Zoom meeting or that one breakout room.
Oh, man. It's such a terrible thing. I know, but the problem is having a school like this with a brick and mortar would cost so much, and I'd have to pay so much in administrative stuff that it's not worth it. So sad. But maybe some of you will start a school that teaches like this, where it's student-centered teaching, because that's the best way to learn. The best way to learn. So I don't know. Well, it's like you're walking through the halls right now, but you're kind of stuck with just 3 of the students. Actually, 5 of the students, because Jillian and I are students as well, right? Okay, we're going to have to say goodbye. Bye. Bye, Ryan. You've been so silent, but we love you. Okay. Have a great day. Have a great summer. Keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. Bye-bye.
Hey, Julie.
See ya.